Okay, hi, this is Gary Beedle of BSRT. I'm here at Lenjet Raceway at Modelville Hobby in Ashland, Massachusetts. I'm here right now attending the first annual US GJET Grand Prix. It's been a fantastic event, so if you hear a little background noise, you'll know what it is. If you saw our other video that we did as far as disassembling a BSRT G3 car, you'll know what we have here. If you haven't seen it, you might want to watch it first. It shows you how to disassemble the G3 car. And then what I'm going to do here in this video is to actually show you how to put it back together. So now we have the various components are already laid out here. We'll get started. Here's the BSRT G3 chassis. So what the first thing I'm going to do is to actually put the pickup holders, which are these little metal pieces right here. We're going to put them into the chassis first so we can put the motor assembly in. So these pickup holders right here, this is the part that interfaces between the pickup shoe, which rides on the track rails, that runs up to the in-bell assembly, which then powers the car. So now these pickup holders fit into slots on each side of the car. So you just kind of position it into place. Sometimes you can pop it into place if you want. Sometimes it's easier to use a little screwdriver like this, and while you're pressing on the top of the pickup holder, just kind of pop it down into place, and there it is. It's ready to go on that side. And then we'll do the other side here. Same thing applies here. Sometimes you just pop it and it'll go right into place. So now they're in position. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to reassemble the armature and in-bell assembly. So you have your in-bell, your timing bracket, and your armature assembly here. So the first thing I'm going to do is to actually press the in-bell into the indentation in the timing bracket, which has the detail on the timing bracket itself to hold it. So basically you just pop it into place. Now you can advance or retard or run neutral timing on the in-bell. For now, I'm just going to put it in the neutral position, just get it in a position, and then once we assemble the car, I'll show you which way you can turn it in order to either advance or retard the timing. So now we have our in-bell together with our timing bracket. So our next step is we want to put our armature into this assembly, and what we need to do is to get the copper commutator here in between the motor brushes that are in the in-bell. Now in order to accomplish that easily, we're going to use the BSRT in-bell tool, which is this tool right here. It fits right over the cone of the in-bell, and then with these little metal pieces right here, that will actually push the brush assembly out of the way so we can put the armature into place. So what I'm going to do is place it over the in-bell. Now I'm in the in-bell itself, and then I'm going to turn it like this, turn it like that, and then pop the armature in between the motor brushes. So here we go. We'll get this apart like this, take the motor assembly, and then you want to actually get the armature shaft into the bushing that's in the in-bell. And then you can tell it's in place by the mere fact that it's now actually in the assembly. And then once that's done, you can release the pressure on the brush assembly, and now you're ready to, this part of the assembly is ready to go into the chassis. Now, before we put it into the chassis, we need to add the motor magnets to this assembly, which will then go in complete. So you want to take the motor magnets. Now, on the motor magnets, the BSRT motor magnets, they typically have a white dot on one of the motor magnets. So that's to help with to aid with assembly. And the white dot should typically go on what would be the passenger side of the car. So it's probably easiest to describe that as passenger side rather than left or right, because any angle you look at the car, and we're talking on US roads, not overseas, the driver is going to be on this side of the car, passengers on this side of the car. As such, the motor assembly is going to go in like this direction in the chassis, so which means the white dot is on the passenger side, which means it's going to go, as I'm looking at it, on the right side of the car, as you're looking at it on the left side of the in-bell assembly. Now, on the assembly itself, there's actually, molded into the plastic, there's a round piece, a round ridge that's right here, and that's to take the inside curve of the motor magnet itself. So that in order to get the motor magnet into the correct position, basically you just let it let the armature suck it into place, and then you line it up so that it's up against that ring. And there's actually a plastic stop on top, which then you can rotate around the ring and then get the magnet up just underneath that plastic piece right there. Now we're going to do the other side, like so. Now the magnets are just sitting there, and they're actually held in place by positioning the front off the timing bracket, but in the back they're loose. I mean, they're loose to move around. So that now, to get the motor assembly as a complete unit into the chassis does take a couple tries at this. Once you've got it, it's very easy. Again, it's like riding a bike. Do it a few times and then you'll never forget. So now, the things you need to watch out for are when you put the motor assembly into the chassis again, you want to make sure that the pickup holders are actually forward in their position right there. Okay, and then hold the chassis in your left hand, and then we're going to take this whole unit right here. I like to actually use my forefinger and middle finger right there in the front of the in-bell itself, and then I use my thumb and my ring finger will actually hold the motor magnets at the same time. So I've got like 4-finger grip on this assembly. And then so I take it in my hand, and then what I want to do is with the timing bracket itself, there's a wall right there, and you can guide it right into position. So that now you've got it started on its way into the chassis. So now the next step you want to do is a couple things actually. You want to make sure your rear bushing. Now your rear bushing may look different than this. This is what we call a double flange bushing. So it's actually got a machined area away here in the middle that fits down into that cavity, and then it has a flange on each side so that bushing can't move once it's in position. Typically the stock bushings are round bushing that fit in front of that position right there, and it doesn't have the rear flange. So you want to make sure that that's there in position so it's close to where it's going to fit into the tab that's in the chassis. So now at this point, I want to make sure that my pickup holders are going to be forward, and I can actually push this assembly down and pop it into position. And when you pop it into position, there's a little tab on the side of the timing bracket. Ultimately, you want this tab to snap into position in this hole in the side of the chassis. And of course, that's on both sides of the chassis. So now, but what I like to do is I like to be safe about putting together. So what I'll do is I'll take a little screwdriver. Anything that's similar to this will work just fine. And then while I'm pushing in the passenger side, I'm going to push on that side first. But while I'm doing it, I'm going to put this screwdriver up behind the pickup holder. I think you can see what I did there. I'll do it again. So it tends to want to fall back. So what I'm going to do is to push that pickup holder forward, and at the same time start to push the motor assembly into the car. So now I'm going to actually hit both sides. You can actually pop it forward and then push down just enough to get it started so the pickup holder's out of the way, and while at the same time making sure your bushing is lining up in the back to make sure it goes down into its cavity. Once you've kind of got it lined up, all you really have to do then is with both thumbs is to push down on the assembly, and it just pops right into place. And then as you can see, the tab now is in the hole on this side, it's in the other side, so you're all set. And so now you've got your motor assembly into position. Now at this point, what I like to do is to, I prefer myself, I like to run the in-bell in what we call the advanced position. So if you were to look at this straight on to the car, in order to advance the in-bell, which you can rotate, there's 3 positions it can move to. So if this screwdriver represents the in-bell itself, if it's sitting parallel, it is at neutral position. Now if you turn it this way, where from your viewpoint, the right side from your viewpoint is going up, that retards it. I typically like to advance it, which is actually the other position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pop it down, turn the in-bell down, pop it down into the advanced position. Now there's little nubs in here, so you can feel it you can feel it locate into position. So with the screwdriver on the top of the in-bell, I'm just going to kind of pop it down on this side, flip the car over, make sure it's popped into position there. I can feel, this is something that you'll get a feel for, but I can feel it's popped into the correct position there. It's in the upper position here, so that now when you look at it, the driver's side of the in-bell has now dropped down a little bit, and the passenger side has come up a little bit. So what you've basically done is you've now taken that motor brush assembly and you've turned it a little bit, so that now basically the armature is firing in a different position, and basically this is what we call advancing the timing, which is where I typically like to run the car, as far as where you actually have your in-bell lined up. So now I've got that into position. The next thing I want to do is to take my screwdriver. Now this is just a little tip that you can do. This screwdriver, it was actually a straight tip screwdriver. I like to file it into sort of a rounded point, and then what that allows me to do is to actually come in behind the pickup holder, which is this copper piece right here, and then there's a tab on the in-bell itself. Now you want to make sure there's good electrical contact between these two pieces, because that's what's carrying the electricity to the motor itself. So now if you have a screwdriver shaped like this, or if you have, I mean, you could use an X-Acto knife, I mean, there are a variety of things, but you want something about this size so you can get it in behind the little tab that's on the in-bell. And what I like to do, and why I like this particular shape, is if I just do this and I press down on it, it's now made, it's pushed the tab forward just a little bit and makes really good contact with that pickup holder. And this is a critical part, because if you don't have good contact here, the car's not going to be performing the way it should, and it may be losing some electrical conductivity, and it may stutter, and you may have some other problems. So this is an important thing to do. And so now I'm going to do the other side. I'm just basically going to slide it into place, and in this particular case, just press down a little bit, and now I'm not sure if you can pick it up, but you're now going to see a bit of daylight between the back of the tab and the in-bell, and it's pressing against the pickup holder. And it's a critical part of getting the power to the motor. Okay, now the next step we're going to do is we're going to want to put the traction maggots in the car. And then you might have heard the term, you may or may not have heard the term so far, in the regard to the traction maggots and the way they fit into the chassis, is that there's a low downforce setup and there's a high downforce. Now, when they refer to those, the low downforce setup means is that if you put these traction magnets in the car a certain way, certain position, their relationship to the motor magnets can increase or decrease the strength of both magnets. So when we say low downforce setup, when the traction magnets go in a particular way, that means that the traction magnets have lower downforce, but it also means that it boosts the motor field, so that it makes this motor field stronger. Now, typically in almost all G3 cars, we're going to want to run high downforce setup, and that's where the motor magnets get knocked down a little bit in strength, but because of the way they're aligned, it actually increases the strength or gives you higher downforce on the traction magnets. So now the $64 question is, which is low downforce and which is high downforce? So now, if you take your traction magnets, and this is the easiest way to do it, is that, okay, I want to know which is which. So what you want to do is the traction magnets will attract the motor magnets on each side of the car. Now, if this is the bottom of the traction magnet. So the rectangular area and the bottom of the traction magnet where it's smaller in the rectangular area, that's actually goes that will go to the bottom of the car, and that's what attracts the steel rails in the car, which gives you downforce. Now, if the bottom of the traction magnet attracts that particular motor magnet, then this motor magnet, this is what we call a high downforce setup. So let me show you the low downforce setup, what it would look like if you're just checking the traction magnets themselves. So all we're talking about here is actually just switching sides with these traction magnets. And now the top of the traction magnet is attracted to the motor magnet, and if you place this magnet on this side and this magnet on this side with this setup, that's what we call low downforce setup. So now we're going to do high downforce setup. So we're going to go back to this just to double check. We got it. Okay, so now the traction magnet, it goes on these same sides with the magnets they're attracting. So now on the G3 car, there's a little tab in the chassis itself that sits right here, and that's actually a ledge that goes with this ledge that holds the traction magnets in place. As such, on the traction magnet itself, if you look at it closely, there's a little small area that's removed right there on the traction magnet itself, and that, what you need to be careful of here while you bring this up, is that that area that's removed right there has to go toward the front of the car or the motor magnet, and that's where that ledge comes into play, so that when you put it in this way into the chassis and the pocket it slides into, it goes right into position. So then basically the traction magnet is held in place on this side, and then we're going to use the traction magnet clip to hold it on the other side. So now, if you don't do that, so let's take a look on this magnet. Now on this magnet, the little groove is right here. Now I'm going to try to put it in wrong, but it's not really going to go in. It's going to be difficult. It's going to bow the chassis. It's not going to work quite right. So what you want to make sure you do is to make sure that you've got that the part of the traction magnet where it's removed, which is right here. Okay, that has to go forward in the car, and so then it slides right into position. Actually, I'm going to turn it around a little bit easier for me, and it slides right into position right there. And as you can see, these are all precision fit. This is basically, this is a very high performance HO slot car, and every part on it is precision manufactured so that you can basically snap it all together. Okay, now the next step we're going to do is to actually pop the traction magnet clip into position, and that will hold the traction magnets in place. At the same time, it comes up over the back of the chassis, and on the clip itself, it will also hold this bushing in position as well. So now the easiest way to attach it is it's going to go, the detail part of the clip goes forward, so basically it's going to be going over the car like this. Now, to get it into position to where it will snap into place, you want to hook onto the side of and I usually find it easier to hook it onto the passenger side first, and then bring it up and over the car and snap it into position. So this little hook right here needs to go below the traction magnet, okay, just like that. And then now you want to make sure it's far enough forward so that when it gets snapped and fits into position, that the detail right there is going to hold the bushing in position. So what I like to do is get it started on that side and then turn it around, and then if you kind of push, and sort of like a wave, if you kind of push it over the car, it just snaps all right into place. First time you do it, you may find it a little difficult. It's really not. But then once you've done it once or twice again, it's like the rest of the car. It's very easy to work on. So now we've secured our traction magnets in place with the clip on properly. It's holding the rear bushing in place. It also separates out the rear of the motor magnets so that now you're ready to go, except for the pickup system and of course the rear axle assembly. Now, next step I would say is quite easy to do, is to actually snap the rear traction assembly into position. So now, on nearly all the cars, you're going to have a little spacer behind the crown gear. And that's there because if you change from a 7 to an 8-tooth pinion, when you go to an 8-tooth pinion, the pinion is slightly larger. You can use little spacers to get the spacing between the pinion and the crown just right. But make sure that when you put the assembly back into the car, make sure that that spacer is up against the crown gear, and that when you snap it into position, it's on the correct side of the chassis. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of drop this into place, line it up so that it's in its position, but it's not snapped into place yet. And all you have to do is hold the chassis, and at the same time give some firm pressure down, and it'll just snap right into place. There we go. All ready to go, and then spin it. You've got it. The slot back and forth, as we call it, is just right. You want a little bit of movement with the rear axle back and forth, and that way the gears are not too tight, but you don't want them loose enough to where if you held the motor and if you turned the crown gear, it shouldn't slip. It shouldn't slip off the pinion. So if you have a standard G3 car, it will come with the correct crown gear spacer. You just need to make sure that it's on the side of the crown gear and not on the other side of the chassis. So now that we've got that into position, the last step we're going to do here is we're going to actually install the pickup springs and the pickup shoes, which is your basic electrical system that hooks up to give you power to your armature. So now the springs, very straightforward. There's a little hole on each side of the chassis just in front of the pickup holder. The springs will drop right into that hole. Sometimes this is a little tricky. You'll get a feel for it. Sometimes these springs want to spring away from you, but aim for the hole and you've got it every time. And so now the pickup shoes can actually be put on two ways. One of the ways you can do it is to actually, this little hook on the pickup shoe itself there can hook into the pickup holder, just like so. And then if you want to, you can sort of slide it forward a little bit and push it forward just enough to where then it will snap right over the tab in the front, so that the hole in the front of the pickup shoe fits right over the tab. So now it's in position. Now that's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it, which I'll do on the second pickup shoe, and over time you may develop a preference for one or the other. I kind of like doing it this way, but you will need a little screwdriver, something like this again, to do it with. But I like to slide the pickup shoe with the hole over the tab first, like this, and then have it in position so it's just sitting there like that. And then what I like to do is I take the screwdriver or whatever you want to use, and then if you grab the hook in the pickup shoe and pop it into place right into the pickup holder, it'll pop right into position. And then once these pickup shoes are in place, there's plastic that's in the chassis, it's designed to be there so that when you push down the pickup shoe, if it tries to come out, it can't once the pickup system is compressed. So now, and one of the really nice features of the G3 car is that it uses what we call a compression spring pickup system. And what that means is basically that this pickup shoe basically floats, and then the spring determines how much tension is against the pickup shoe. And what that does is, instead of a lever type pickup spring, which is extremely difficult to tune and it's hard to repeat, a compression spring is, you can put in springs of different wire diameters, and then you can adjust the speed of the car that you can achieve through the pickup system itself. And everything's perfectly repeatable because you're just dropping a compression spring back into it. But that would be for another video. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is, the very last thing actually I'll do is we'll show again how this body snaps onto the chassis. So now this is a Tomy, this actually is a BSRT Formula 902 car. So it uses a long wheelbase in the chassis. And now that we've got the car assembled, we can snap the body onto the car. This is a Tomy AFX Super G Plus body. They make a variety of Formula bodies that will fit the car. And the bodies have, as you can tell, this one's been run a bit. It's actually been through a race today. So it's not exactly pristine, but still in good shape. So now we have tabs on the body itself, and what you're going to want to do is to get the chassis started with the tab into the hole that's in the side of the chassis, but you want to get started on one side first. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of rotate it into the body. Okay, so the tab is in the hole on this side of the car, and then what I want to do now though is I'm going to want to stretch, kind of basically pop the chassis into position so that the other side will come pop into the hole. Now this side of the body, these bodies are somewhat flexible, so if I press in like this, it just snaps right into position. Now both the tabs are in position in the chassis, it's now located where it should be, and now you've got a BSRT G3 Formula 902 car you can take out to the track and start racing.